Today is really important. Really, really important. Because I believe it's about interacting with the deepest inadequacy a person can experience is that they do not have the ability to love at all. In a lot of ways, you can understand a little bit more about why men are afraid of women. It's like, well, please, God forbid, don't remind us of that. But it requires a deeper question. A deeper question always requires a deeper commitment to life because questions can unravel your current understanding of them. As of recently in my life, I've noticed that showing up as you are is the best way to heal it. As in a lot of ways, the thing that you feel doesn't belong is the very thing you need to bring to life. You need to bring to your life. This is going to be the removal of creating a reality that conforms to everything you don't want to address. In a lot of ways, I've been working with my men's groups and my women's groups, and it's been transforming me in a way that's required me to come closer. That's what I want this to be about, what it is to come closer to your life, to come closer to your heart. The path of opening your heart is probably want to be one of the biggest commitments in your life. And if you're a young guy or a young girl and you're looking to be in a relationship, well then this is the video for you. Because as I speak to you, I speak to myself. And I hold myself to a standard that not many people do. It's not an expectation, it's something I want. There's a certain depth of a commitment that a person could make. And that commitment can mirror the beauty. It could be mirrored in the beauty of a relationship that they have with a partner. Now, when we talk about what exactly does a woman represent to a man, what we're really talking about is the necessity of beauty and the mirror reflection of the beauty inside. And it's interesting because in a lot of ways, the modern solution to opening up is putting the person right in front of the door and making it about the person. And unfortunately, I know so many people, even that I work with in my relationship consulting spaces, that they're good for each other. But the way that they utilize each other is a way to avoid everything about themselves. And so we've created, the modern solution to the commitment to yourself, the placeholder, and people are often that. It started to make me really connect with vampires because that was something I was experiencing. And I believe that this really circulates around shame. And I think the deepest shame of all is you cannot love. I know the whole thing about being loved is, I find, typically a mirror reflection of what you're really trying to say, which is I think most people are disconnected from. Not being able to love is the deepest inadequacy a person could have. You could even say, well, that's deeper than maybe not being loved at all. And I think that one comes before the other because it's important to understand that love is a double door. That your ability to give it opens the other door of being able to receive it. My understanding of love at this point has changed and evolved because I've recognized that where's the love if you're not there? Love of who? Of you? You don't know you. You bury you. You hide you. You find a place to, negotiate with what's important about you. And the very thing that you believe doesn't belong is the very thing the world needs. And I noticed that to be true because I had this yearning and craving about since the age I was 4. An existential loneliness, you can say. I felt like an unescapable dread. And of course, well, then you find out this whole thing that we're born with partners, or at least you tell yourself you are. Look, I was a twin, so you could imagine a little bit about how that's like, I'm used to having another half. And that started to make me realize a little bit about what we exist with, our own duality and the necessity to integrate it to become an individual. I'd always look around, I'd see people holding hands, being with one another. I was an all-boys family, and that wasn't easy, especially when your mother was religiously fanatic and your father used to be an ex-Hollywood rock star. And I know as crazy as that sounds like I'm describing the beginning of a Netflix TV show, but it could be, but I know one thing for certain, is it's not just me. Most people live a mystery of a life. They don't even know who their parents are. Their foundation is so far removed, it's not a question they ask themselves. And so then you start to, skip the steps of who you are. Well, love is going to be the ultimate question. And it's actually the necessity of understanding who you are is because of the depth, the understanding of who you are is driven by this deep desire to love. As in, we often kind of try to look for this, let me find who I am. Like, it doesn't matter if there isn't a love you're looking to give. And when you think about the highest purpose, I have come to this understanding that it is to love true. And to love true is, everybody has their own way of manifesting it, so then I guess who you are is very important. But if the question is to love, I think you need to understand the depth of its darkness that is required in order to do so. As growing up, I'd see people hold hands, and it was never easy for me. I didn't have girls in my life. And the whole idea of emotions were so far removed, like, excuse me? What are you talking about? You're crazy. There's external achievement and things that need to get done. Sensitivity in my household didn't exist. My mother rejected it. My father, he embodied stoicism. I mean, he'd be shot, you wouldn't know. And you could say that's a virtue. I honestly don't think it is, especially when considering his strength comes through his sensitivity. And wise, stoic, remarkable, philosophical, intellectual, connected, inspiring, and loving. Very, very, very loving. There's a softness to the heart that's required for a man's strength, and that's removed. We exist as a concept. And I felt like in a lot of ways I existed as a concept. Who I needed to be existed as a concept. And really, I want this video to be a little bit more about that. You know, love is disiluding of the concept you've made yourself, and it's the beginning of you being that very thing. Imagine you could hold hands with someone and tell them, baby, let's live real life together. Let's live real life together. And then you're recognizing that the relationship is not to make you run from reality. It's to immerse you deeper than you've ever been, probably deeper than you've ever been comfortable. And you know, you could say, well, that's an unbreakable romance. That's a love that transcends time. It's a love that you've been searching for across oceans. It's the very sense of being. And we're all looking for that. Back to my development, I recognize, you know, my mother was harsh and critical and, you know, had her own ways of coping. And, well, a great thing to do with somebody who's neurotic and has a hard time with their emotions, give them biblical text. It's better. Some people are high functioning. And I think a lot of people forget that, is that, you know, your parents could be alcoholics or they could be fanatics. And the truth is you're not going to escape from that in your life. And right now in the 21st century, you could excel to be something far worse at a capacity that's far more destructive. I mean, everybody has their vices, and I think it's about being able to understand the foundation and how that shapes you. So it was difficult because, you know, it was a question of God was so relevant in my life, but it was a question of what kind of God. And so was love. And you only have boys and you want them to, you know, get married young, because whatever that means, but all you hear is the fear in their voice when they tell you to do it. And so the scarcity furthers. The best of intentions, you know, the way to hell is paved with the best of intentions. And I think that's because the quote is there to remind you of what happens when an individual is disconnected from reality. And the best of intentions typically come with the most unconscious parts of themselves that are deeply, deeply selfish. And there's nothing wrong with that. And perhaps maybe this video will give you a lot more clarity to what love really requires, and a little bit about what the journey it took for me to get here. And look, I'm coming closer. I want to come closer to everyone and everything, and to my audience and the people I speak to. And I don't want to be removed from it, because I'm noticing it's removing myself from my gifts. It's removing me from my sense of self. I exist as a concept long enough that my state of being is removed. And then also the very thing that is my life becomes an idea. And it's an idea that's removed from my experience. And that sounds disgusting. And at the end of the day, what I'm looking for is the real deal. And I noticed the importance of feelings, but it was never something I was raised with. And I've become further and further removed from it. And my father was always there to support me. I had parents that were present. I'm not there to go ahead and tell you I don't have the biggest blessings ever. If I didn't even take a single step forward for myself, I would have a better life than 99.999% of people. And I say that with humility. I say that with a deep amount of understanding. But what's beautiful to me is to see that even when you have what other people don't, that you would still be willing to do what's best for you. It's not a question of can you swim with bowling balls. It's a question of how fast you can swim. And then a person gets to experience their strength. And I feel like the aspiration towards that has to be somebody who's driven by love. And a person that's driven by love is deeply connected to life. In fact, actually, they have a sensitivity towards life. They look to it in order to elevate it. And I feel like that's exactly what love is. It's not the change of things, it's the transformation of things. And I feel like that word is a big distinction to help you understand a little bit more about the importance of having this in your life. You'll be able to get an understanding of where this story goes, because it's going to be a story of you that I know for certain we all share. And it's not going to be an easy conversation, and it's going to require your life. And perhaps maybe you will have to stand under the spotlight as you are, naked, ashamed, vulnerable. The very thing that you've been hiding your whole life, you are coming closer to. We all have our evolution of consciousness here, and for me it was, okay, well, I got to go look for this woman, and I'd see people holding hands hand in hand at Disneyland. I remember the first time I saw a blonde girl. That was insane. I was only raised with brunettes, brown eyes, Jewish culture. It's not going to see a lot of blonde hair, blue eyes. Oh, I remember it was like, I grabbed my brother's shirt. I was like, like Leonardo DiCaprio from fucking Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I was like, what's that? And of course, like I was 11. I was a slug, Inadequacy City. And it was interesting because you could say, how do these insecurities evolve? And what do they evolve to? And how does somebody build themselves up? And so I'm looking at the girl and I'm like, oh my God. I'm drooling. I'm drooling at the very fact that, like, I've never been exposed to that. I was only raised around boys. Girls were something I experienced through a screen. And if it was through porn. And that's really bad because then they become nothing but a sexual object. And now I can't connect with them. And then if I can't connect with them, then I can't connect with the feminine in myself. And then I become a disconnected robot. Or you could even say a high-functioning narcissistic type because I was becoming that. Well, at 11, that's the first thing that I saw. And I mean, there's nothing short of inadequate that I felt. I felt complete and total inadequacy. And in fact, I had no understanding of it. And I had this whole idea that, at some point, somebody will set me up. And then I would see people together. And I would think about what that really spoke to. And were they really together? And what is the basis of a modern relationship? What makes someone together? And well, that was the hunger that I had in me. I was like a vampire. And you could say, well, a vampire is all the unconscious parts of human nature that's willing to do anything for blood. And blood is for life. And life is in connection. And you need it from others. And it's like, well, that's the most relevant symbol of the dating world, vampires, right? Like, I'm a vampire. You're a vampire. Everybody's watching this as a vampire. And it's just a question of whether or not they recognize it. But the difference between a vampire and a man, and I would say a man as a human, is that one lives with that understanding consciously. I watched 2 vampire films recently. One was Interview with a Vampire. And that was very powerful because it really lets you see the humanity that exists in what it takes to have a connection. And it's like, well, you really want to know what a connection is. A connection is the most selfish aspiration in your life. What makes you think you're going to have one? Well, you could say, how do you create a narcissistic relationship? Deny the selfish component that allows it to exist. Why? Because you remove yourself from the relationship and you create a mirror. And Narcissus is the one that fell in love with his mirror reflection. And so most people don't have relationships. They have, this self-obsessed AI girlfriend or boyfriend that, just meets all of their projections that doesn't allow them to face their insecurities. It's something interesting about that is try sharing that with your friends and family. They'll definitely tell you what they think about it and you won't like it. In a lot of ways, that's what most people become. They become an ultimate placeholder, a placeholder to their own commitments that allows them to develop their lives. Their ability to even lead their relationships is so far removed because how the hell could you lead a relationship if through the very door that you need to walk for yourself, you place them? And then we start recognizing a little bit about what exactly is connection. And it's like, well, I've been recognizing that it's much darker than we think. And, a person that's exposed to that kind of darkness, like you could say like a vampire, is really, really exposed to an understanding of what connection really takes. It's like, man, you have to suck people's blood to survive. It's like, yeah, welcome to being human. How could you take the very thing that's that dark and that selfish and you could transform to love? And so the story tells that. An Interview with a Vampire. It really shows you that this love can transcend even with the people that you use. And so using is not really the problem. And then again, the story evolves. And I recognize, well, that started with me. And I was talking a little bit about relationships and, are they really real? And it's like, well, how could you say they're real? You'd have to be willing to walk alone in order to recognize the value of a relationship. Because most people's relationships, they look a little bit like this. 20 years down the line, got up and cheated. And, well, this is what it is. And most people have to reject everything about who they are in order to actually sustain the impossible ideal that they've never even bothered to integrate. Heart burns. When I speak from the heart, this is what happens. Gotta get through the walls. A lot of this is coming to me, and I'm finding it to be very rich because I get to paint a picture for myself, and it's a picture that I get to come closer to. So look at me being vampiric here. I want to get closer to it because I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with what love can do. I want it for myself, and I've recognized how disconnected I've been from it. For this real love that we're talking about comes from the darkest places of ourselves, and for years, I've talked about it, but to experience it is shameful. To experience it is incredibly shameful because, to exist with that kind of consciousness about human nature, I guess it means in a lot of ways you're more familiar with human darkness than most people are. Well, how would you be familiar with it unless you became one yourself? And a lot of these things about movies and even these symbols is they speak to much larger truths about ourselves and perhaps maybe the dark unconscious manifestation of what we are doing daily throughout our lives. I'd see couples hold hands. I'd see people together and I'd ask myself that question. Why is it so hard for me? Why is it so hard for me? Well, it's a glorified question of, do I believe I can love? Why is it so hard for me? And then the more you develop, the more you discover, the more you connect with yourself, the harder it gets. The lonelier it is. And over the last few weeks, I don't think I've ever felt loneliness like this. And I also didn't think I've ever felt further from love. I felt like a vampire, hungry for connection, willing to do it with anyone or anything. And my whole relationship with this part of me was shameful. And the interesting part is I was talking to a bunch of girls. I'd go out and I'd hunt. I just wanted to find it for myself. And, I've recognized how that looked at my past relationships as I was always looking for this connection, so hungry for this connection. But that hunger itself is a very, very dark hunger. It's to have something for yourself eternally. It's the story of Dracula. Is that he lost that love and he was willing to, make this covenant with darkness. And so it tapped into this hidden potential within himself that in a lot of ways, removed his own humanity from him so that he could have that love. But then again, the whole process of the story is him recognizing that perhaps he feels he doesn't have a heart even when he discovers that love late 400 years down the line. I mean, talk about a hunger. 400 years waiting for the love of your life, knowing that she'd be reborn. And trying to, search across oceans of time and imagine that love that was taken, how much that hurts. And in a lot of ways, we feel that we don't have that love within ourselves and we live with a hole. And we create a culture that removes us from the feeling of that hole. And we live with a hunger that makes us weak in the face of it. A hunger that we deny, a hunger that we repress, a hunger that manifests unconsciously. And I had such a fear of that. And I would go out this recently. It was, I remember 5 years ago was the last time I was in a relationship. And it looked a little bit like me doing anything to have one. Anything to have one. I wanted that more than anything. That I'd find somebody, and this is the interesting part, I'd make him my little picture-perfect doll of what I needed or what I believe I needed, and it was a nightmare. It wasn't a relationship. The person had to compromise everything about who they were. I didn't even connect with any of those things. I needed it. I needed it. It was a hunger that was burning so deep that I wasn't willing to spend another few days, and there was such a shame, a lingering shame. I do bad things if I'm desperate. It's another truth. You have to start learning to accept that you're desperate, to accept that there's a depravity, to accept that there's a hunger. Maybe what you're looking for is deeper than what the body needs. Maybe what you're looking for is what the soul needs, and the body is mirroring that, and it's calling to it, but you're split down the middle. You're separate from both, and maybe this here can help you integrate it, help you feel it. And the feelings are maybe you're going to be of sadness and tremendous amounts of shame because, I wouldn't expect anything less when discovering the part of you that is required in order to have a loving relationship. It's not the way that you think. Your understanding of morality is blurred. What you deem to be good is merely just what you use to conform to the reality you don't want to address. And you further create a commitment to that. And you bow your head down to this very cheap understanding of God. And you don't even have a relationship with anything. You don't feel, you're numb, you're empty. And if for the first time in your life you saw that woman beside you and you woke up from your coma, you would look at her and you would feel nothing. You would feel nothing at all. And that would scare you. And you'd be left with the inadequacy of your own existence, that you're an undead walking. The other night, I actually got to feel that for the first time. I felt like I was running from this shame, this hunger, and how dark and how persistent and how real it is. The last 2 weeks have been lonely and cold. When you're lonely, you get to experience the coldness of your heart. You get to see the distance. And for the first time, maybe you get to come closer to the love that you've been looking for your whole life. The hunger is not to be rejected, to be brought into the light. When it's brought into the light, you'll see how it's unconsciously manifested. And I had that in my life. I kept talking to girls at the park. Every single one of them had a boyfriend. And every time they did have a boyfriend, I'd have to resort to my own glory, my own piety, my own sanctimony of how I go, oh, well, this is bad. They were there flirting with me for 20 minutes before they told me anything. They even let me touch them. I had to fucking recognize what was her screen shaver on the back of the phone in order to realize. I'm like, what I miss here? I'd even feel shame for not giving a fuck. I'd feel shame for the fact that this hunger was more powerful than my own perceived understanding of morality. And I became weak in the face of reality. I became weak in the face of my hunger. And my values became blurred. And the truth is that when I was able to accept this desperation and that I didn't care and that I'd be willing to do anything in order to meet this desire for connection, I was able to discover my values. Maybe it wasn't with girls who had boyfriends, but it was definitely with girls who were married. Well, there goes your projection of me. There goes the concept. There goes the feet on the ground. Welcome to reality. Your heroes are not really your heroes, and your idealization of people is exactly what's removed you from who you can become for yourself. You're so focused on being misunderstood. You never even bothered understanding how important it is for you to be you in this world. You protect your own concept, like as if that's the thing you want to do. You want to be immersed in your life. You want to be soaked in it. And so, in the midst of this loneliness, it was interesting, it was persisting. I was just so hungry. I was looking left, I was looking right, I was in the DMs, and they were dry. 500,000 followers, not one prospect. That's kind of how it works. Well, maybe you got to go sit some time in the dark. Who wants to sit time in the dark? Nobody. Who has a story that's committed and aimed towards love? A relationship that transcends time. Something that we ourselves can be connected to from the inside out. A very thing that we have along with us every day. And the New Testament is mirrored as God is love. You could say love is God. There's more. And maybe this is actually the beginning of something that you could have about you that speaks to your life and the constant miracle that it is. And I felt like I've been in a coma. Where's the love? It was after I watched the movie Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I 100% recommend you watch. Because it made me realize, some people go a long, long time before they get that connection. But it's something that has existed within inside of us the whole time. And it's in the darkest places of ourselves, and it's maybe undignified. It's maybe something we don't accept, but when we talk about love, we want to be loved for who we are, not for the concept we make ourselves. We'll never feel seen. We'll never even feel understood. And that fear of you being misunderstood, well, you manifested your doomsday, and you had your hand on the red button. I felt numb. I didn't know what it was. I was talking to this one girl, and it felt so far removed. I felt so gone. I felt so far. I felt so distant. I don't know. God works in mysterious ways. I open up my YouTube, and I see this John Bellion song, and it says, "Conversations with my wife." And I was like, well, that's a beautiful title. I want to click on that. I'd love to have conversations with my wife. Like, what kind of conversations? Most of you guys are busy protecting your concept. You can't have conversations. You can't say the truth. You say the truth, your life falls apart. Your identity falls apart. Oh, I told her the truth. You don't have availability for it. Get out of here. You lack courage. You lack courage to tell the people you love that you watch porn. You lack courage to tell the people you love that you struggle. You lack courage to tell the people you love that you're sad. You lack courage to tell the people you love that you're lost. You lack courage to bring the people you love closer to you with your struggles. What you're more concerned about is everything that removes you from your life. Connection is confirming of your individuality. It's the importance of connection. Noticed a big change in my life before I get into the song that I listened to, and it was, a lot of my brothers are breaking their identities, the things that they've identified their whole life, their moral sanctimony that they're so far removed from, their relationship with God that's nothing but a burden, a fearful relationship of Him striking you down with lightning. Now they want to have something that's rooted in love. Perhaps maybe it takes taking a step away from that. Maybe deconstructing the God that you've made kosher so that you can really find God. Go eat your bacon sandwich because you made that your God. Can't be if it's in your digestive system. And in a lot of ways, I feel like there's some sort of deep, deep importance to the unity and the unification of everyone, and Christians, Muslims, Jews, human beings, mankind. All of these stories speak to one thing, is that there's something even more important than just the obsession of what we've made God. Perhaps maybe we could experience Him. And I feel that the most lonely figure in existence might be God. And I think that you might be second in line. When we talk about lonely, we talk about people who aren't seen. For the first time in my life, I recognized that, one of my brothers took shrooms, and that completely changed his reality. The other one did too, and that made him start challenging the foundation of his life and the things he believed in, and he realized he's part of an orthodox cult. Most people do. That's why they come to work with me, maybe make it a little bit more clear. You're not lost. It's the beginning of you being found. Changes. Mother changing. Father changing. Brothers changing. But all of this thing about who we are went out the window. I never felt closer to my brothers. I can cry on their shoulders. I could bring them close. I could tell them my struggles. I know they understand. I'm beginning to understand the purpose of life through connection, through one another. It's not just through having a good time, but it's through opening up and developing a deeper connection with who you are. That's the purpose of connection. Two people who are deeply, deeply, deeply selfish about that connection. They're hungry vampires who are aware of it and understand that they could feed each other's soul through each other. That's a connection. Bring it into the light and you transform it. But you transform it from the shame that you bear, the weight that it's on your shoulders because of this concept of how you believe these things are. Experience them in being. They'll bring you closer to your life. Now it's no longer talking about our sanctimony, about how we live right. It's how we live together. I got to see the courage of that. I come home one night after watching Dracula at my brother's house. Never thought I'd be invited. Well, he shared with me a little bit about, his struggles in his marriages. I felt that I got to come closer, maybe come closer to a space where I get to experience myself. I always experience myself most when I watch films, because I cry the most when I watch films. I get to experience the story, and when I experience the story, I'm moved. I think about the story of my life. Think about the story of your life. You're old. Your body is no longer what it used to be, but you're in a chair. And you could watch it, and you could see the theme. And the theme is I love you, and it's been there throughout your whole life. And throughout the darkest moments, it's been most clear. But you've been most resistant to experiencing what's always been there. So I go upstairs to my room. I lay down on the bed, and it's like, where am I? I feel like I'm dead inside. And it hit me, and I play the song, and then I hear the song, and it was like, it was music to my ears. It awoke in my soul. And the song went a little like this. It was, would you love me when the phone turns off? And it has a motif of her being beside him, always, and has been. And then the one line that really woke me up was, let's experience real life together. And it was like, experience real life. And it was like, where's my life? Where's reality? Where am I? And I'm not joking when I say this. I literally had a vision. And it was the same room I was in. You could say I was sleep deprived. Well, why not? And I saw her right next to me. I saw a silhouette of her body. She was breathing. Curves like rolling hills and thick, glowing hair down her back. And she was breathing gently and at peace. She was right beside me. But it felt like I woke up from a coffin. Like Dracula, emerging. For the first time, awakening. 400 years later. And when I saw her, I felt nothing. I felt dead inside. I never thought that I'd be able to put myself in a position to where I could feel that. I awoke. She's still asleep. I know this is very, very soon and very, very close in my life because I could feel it now. I have faith in it now. I have faith in it now because I got to experience it as it is, not as a concept. And as it is, it's honestly one of the most inadequate feelings of my life. I said, I hope you don't wake up. I don't want you to see me like this. I have nothing to offer. I have no heart. It's cold, it's frozen, it's distant. I can no longer say, where are you, my love? I can only say, where am I? And I can only say, where is the love? The love that I myself am not living with. And I realized, if there's anything that I want to give her is the love that I give myself, I could share it with her. Now I can actually have something to give. And it's always started with me.